So my name is Milton Bluehouse. I will be today's facilitator for the Economic Development Panel. And before I begin, I wanted to introduce myself. I work closely with the Office of the Commissioner for the Administration for Native Americans as a project consultant. And so before we begin, I wanted to acknowledge that this particular conference has a theme, the 2022 ACF Indigenous Programs Conference. The theme is supporting, celebrating, and sustaining our Native American and Pacific Island communities. And so with that, I wanted to check in with former chairman from the Red Lake Nation, Mr. Jourdain. Are you available to provide our opening prayer, sir? Okay, so I believe that we do have some technical difficulties for Chairman Jourdain. And so with that, I'll go ahead and lead on into the opening prayer, and then we'll move on into our panel conversation. And so with that, I wanted to ask each of our participants and panelists to acknowledge the presence of the sacred as I call upon our deities in the Navajo language. And we also begin to ask for blessings and prayers for our economic recovery within our tribal communities. And so with that, I'll go ahead and start our prayer. Nastanchma Jona Ishta Stanat Lehe Yadekil Hashtiati do Hashtiawan Danskeshki Dansweet Ed Tadinski Taniet Ed Sanai Pike Hojon Dien the Net on Oslingi Nihina Jesus, and also all of the deities from all of our indigenous nations and cultures across the world. We call upon all of you, and we also acknowledge the presence of the Creator. We humbly ask for the blessings for our tribal communities to have a full economic recovery, that our tribal members will be employed, and that our tribal economies will rebound from the last 2 years of the slowdown related to COVID-19. The vision that we have for all of our communities, Creator, is that our people will be employed, and that our young people will be educated, and that there will be opportunities throughout all of our communities for all of our families to provide for one another, to have a bountiful future, and that there will be a reduction or even a complete absence of poverty in our communities, and that all of us feel a sense of accomplishment and worth, and that we are instilled with hope for the betterment of our communities. And for all of these things, Creator, we ask that you be with all of our leaders from the White House and all the way into our tribal leadership, as well as our community leadership, and for all of our community members and all of our young people out there, that you will continue to protect them from harm or sickness. And Creator, we ask that you be with those who are especially impacted by the hardships that were created by the pandemic. And for all of these things, Creator, we thank you for all of the blessings that you provided for us today. And we also thank you again for all of the blessings of our family and for our health as well. On ending, we ask that we be fortified with resilience and creativity, so that our communities will have economic rebound and have economic regrowth and be prosperous into the future. For all of these things, I end my prayer in our Navajo way by asking for the restoration of beauty. Hujo Nahastlin, Hujo Nahastlin, Hujo Nahastlin, Hujo Nahastlin, and that all of these things will be done with harmony and beauty and cooperation amongst all of our people throughout all of our communities. Thank you so very much. And so with that, I wanted to begin our economic development panel with a very special guest from the White House, Mrs. Libby Washburn, who is the Special Assistant to the President for Native American Affairs, and she will provide information on the initiatives as well as the work that is ongoing with the White House related to tribal economic development. Libby?
Thank you, Milton, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for some of you. Thank you so much for including me in this very important session. Also want to thank all the organizers for putting this together. We love these types of activities. We like these moments where we can share information with all of you. And so also thank everybody who's on the call today listening. So delighted to be here today to talk about President Biden's efforts to lift up Native American economies with the resources needed to build stronger communities and successfully recover from a life-altering pandemic. Since taking office, President Biden has committed to supporting Native American communities with more than $32 billion through the American Rescue Plan. And this is in addition to the $8 billion that Indian communities received through CARES Act funding. So combined, the Biden administration has disseminated more than $40 billion to tribal communities to address emergency needs related to the pandemic. This includes a whole host of different activities. So $20 billion was provided directly to tribal governments, and many funds were given in direct payments to tribal members experiencing hardship. And tribal nations also have used this money. There was other funds that were used for healthcare and to bring drinking water to tribal communities, to make sure there was electricity in remote homes on tribal lands. These resources were also used to help with emergency response capabilities. And this includes public safety and ensuring that first responders were ready to protect tribal communities. The resources also helped provide mental and behavioral health services to people, to children who were enduring trauma from the pandemic. The White House has, and I think you will hear more about these funds with the later speakers, but overall, a big effort in the first few months of the administration to make sure that tribal communities could sustain and thrive. And we believe that that is what we're seeing, and excited to talk to you today about opportunities through the American Rescue Plan and other funds that we hope that you will take advantage of. We hope that you will apply for funding. We hope that you will leverage with other funding that you have. And so I think that's kind of one of the main purposes of this talk today. Also want to talk a little bit about what the Biden administration has done overall. So in our first week in office, the president issued a memorandum on tribal consultation. So as walking into the office with a change of administration, the president wanted to firmly note that we were going to do things differently. We were going to listen to tribes. We were going to consult. And so immediately, all the federal agencies started to go out to consult with tribes to talk about how tribes wanted to be worked with, how they wanted the decision-making process to work so they could be included. And at the end of the day, we had more than 80 agencies that created consultation plans of action, more than ever before. In previous administrations, we were looking at 30, 40 agencies that were consulting. So we more than doubled that. And little agencies that didn't even know that they had tribal equities, but we made everybody kind of dig down and realize what they needed to be doing to help support and help follow through with the trust responsibility to tribal nations. So we issued that presidential memorandum in the opening days of office. We also, within the first 100 days, reestablished the White House Council on Native American Affairs. This is a dynamic group of federal leadership partners. It's the head of every major federal agency and many of the smaller agencies. It brings all of government together to focus on multiple issues. So what we found years ago was that the federal government was siloed, and this agency was working on a tribal issue, and this agency was working on a tribal issue, yet they weren't talking. And so the White House Council is really causing more of a interagency focus and all of government approach to Native affairs. And when this happens, Indian country benefits from it. And I hope that you start to see the benefits of this. We stood it up, we hired an executive director within about, I think, a month of re-standing up the White House Council. And then we also created 6 distinct committees. One of those committees is the Economic Development, Energy, and Infrastructure Committee. It's led by representatives from the Department of Energy, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce, and the Small Business Administration. The White House serves on this committee, and dozens of other agencies participate, including Interior, Health and Human Services, including ANA, the Department of Labor, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, just to name a few. And these committees, this committee in particular, meets regularly and discusses plans for interagency coordination, consultations, and initiative and policy development that's focused on tribal economic growth, energy, and infrastructure. And we're seeing great things coming out of these committees. We had a summit that we held in November, and we announced dozens and dozens of new initiatives, and these initiatives were generated through these committees. And for the first time, we had a treaty rights memorandum of agreement that the agencies agreed that they would focus on treaty rights in a similar fashion. And we had 17 agencies sign on to that MOU. We've never had anything like that before. We had a couple agencies create an MOU together, 2 or 3 agencies, but 17. This is definitely altering how we do business with tribes. Also wanted to note that in addition to the American Rescue Plan funding, which has been a huge game changer for Indian country, we also got the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the president signed it in late fall, and it contains more than $13 billion in direct funding for tribes, and the tribes have the ability to access billions more. So, in addition to that 40 billion that I previously announced, we have an additional 13, so $53 billion that's going into Indian country. And I often point to, previously in previous administration with ARA, the tribes got $3 billion. And so just want to highlight that, $53 billion, this is significant, and we can do a lot with this. And we are doing a lot with it. You are doing a lot with it. And we want to work with you to help make it more successful. And so the bipartisan infrastructure law, more than $13 billion. This is focused on roads and bridges, broadband, water, sanitation, water rights, settlements, and a slew of other things. And that money is starting to trickle out. Some of it has been distributed, announced, and then other pots of money are coming. And there's lots and lots of opportunities, dozens and dozens of opportunities to apply for funds. There's so much money in the transportation portion of this bill, but it means just on the ground, clean drinking water, broadband and internet service for virtual learning and economic opportunities, and healthcare. More telehealth will be available to tribal nations. So extremely excited to get this important piece of legislation. We've needed it for decades, and we were able to do it in this first year in office. The president is also working on an agenda that is focused on Build Back Better and increasing support for education services, job training, locally led economic development projects, that some of the things that ANA has been working on. And we are hopeful and continuing to work to get this legislation passed. It is a priority of the president. So just want to kind of close with saying that, in this last year, that, in his first year in office as president, the federal support has been unprecedented in terms of funding for tribal governments. We will continue to push for more funding opportunities. And I hope that at the end of this administration, you look back and you really note what the government has been able to do for Indian country, and that we can see a marked difference in prior to this administration and then at the end of this administration. Our work is just beginning. The president is committed to Native issues. And hopefully, if any of you participated on the summit or watched it, you saw the president attended the summit, addressed all of the tribal leaders. The vice president was there. The first lady was there. We had 13 cabinet members there. And so there's such engagement and just such a willingness to try to help and get more funds out to where they need to be. I thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk about the president's initiatives to support tribal economies, and look forward to working with you in the coming weeks, months, and years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Libby. We really appreciate all of the work that the White House, especially the president, has undertaken to support the recovery and the response to the pandemic in our tribal communities. I can look out my window right now and I see a trenching crew just a few yards away down by the road putting in some water lines that are part of the funds that have been provided by ARPA and by CARES. And so throughout all of our tribal communities, we certainly appreciate the work that you, as well as the president and all of your colleagues at the White House, are doing to improve our tribal communities. We have over 295 participants on our call today. And I just want to give a quick shout out for our indigenous nations and our representatives from Hawaii and Guam and Alaska, Montana, South Carolina, California, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Idaho, Iowa, Ohio, and many other different places. And so we are excited to present additional information on the specific work that is being focused on economic development opportunities for our Native American communities. And so with that, I wanted to transition over to Janelle George, who works as the Deputy Director for the Administration for Children and Families Office of Community Services. Janelle?
Thank you so much, Mr. Woodhouse, for that kind introduction. Again, my name is Janelle George, and I am the Deputy Director of the Administration for Children and Families Office of Community Services, or OCS. First, I just want to say I greatly appreciate the Administration for Native Americans inviting OCS to participate in what is an incredibly important economic development plenary session for this year's conference. On behalf of the OCS director, Dr. Laniqua Howard, I do want to thank Deputy Commissioner Lone Tree for her leadership and the support that we have received from ANA in working with us to disseminate important information to our tribal grant recipients. I will tell you that at OCS, our mission is promoting the economic and the social well-being of children, families, and communities. We are partnering with states, territories, tribes, and other community level agencies, and our social service and community development programs are diverse, and they work in really a variety of ways to improve the lives of many. In fact, everything that we do at OCS is driven by our commitment to reducing poverty, increasing opportunity and economic security of individuals and families, and revitalizing communities. I know that some of you may be familiar with OCS programs. My goal today is to provide you some background on our key programs of interest to the tribal community, and also just to really sort of spark your thoughts and solicit your feedback on how we can really just continue to enhance our collaboration and the level of support that we provide to you and the families and individuals in your tribes. So what I want to do is just begin with sort of a high-level description of all OCS programs that are available to tribes, and then I'll do just a little bit of a deeper dive into two programs we believe are particularly important to the tribal community. So first, in regards to our formula grant programs, we have the Community Services Block Grant, or CSBG, as we refer to it. CSBG supports services that are designed to ameliorate the causes and the conditions of poverty, and it does this by assisting individuals and families with low incomes and communities with services based on local needs. We also have our Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP, and LIHEAP provides funds to states, tribes, and tribal organizations and territories to assist households with low incomes in meeting their home energy costs, and that includes heating and cooling. We have our newest program, the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, or as we affectionately refer to it, LIHWAP. And LIHWAP provides funds to assist low-income households with water and wastewater bills. LIHWAP grants are available to states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the U.S. territories, as well as federally and state-recognized tribes and tribal organizations that received fiscal year 21 LIHEAP grants. So that's an important distinction, and you must have received 2021 LIHEAP grants. We also have our discretionary grant programs, including the Community Economic Development Program, or CED. CED has discretionary grants that are awarded to nonprofit community development corporations in disinvested communities. And these projects are for purposes of creating new jobs for individuals with low income, and particularly including those that are receiving temporary assistance for needy families services, or TANF. We also have the Rural Community Development Program, or RCD. And RCD provides discretionary grants to assist low-income communities in developing affordable and safe water and wastewater treatment facilities. So for today's plenary, I'm going to focus on two OCS programs, CSBG and LIHEAP, and just also sort of briefly detail how OCS is really working to enhance our support of the tribal community to meet your economic development needs. So in regards to CSBG, again, the Community Services Block Grant, we have made some significant investments in the tribal communities. Currently, there are 66 direct funded OCS CSBG tribal grant recipients, and these grantees are serving over 148 Native American and Alaska Native tribes, villages, and communities, and they're doing so across 24 states. Additionally, there are some tribal communities that receive the CSBG funding directly from the state. Some examples of this include in the state of Minnesota, New York, and also California. Tribes can use CSBG funds to support a variety of services, everything from employment, education, youth development, senior services, as well as health, nutrition, emergency services, as well, and financial education. And of course, there are many other critical services that promote economic development and economic mobility that CSBG funds can be used for. Now, I know that for some of you, you may have CSBG funded services that you are providing regularly. However, just know that a regular assessment, if you will, of your tribal community's needs can really serve as a powerful activity that can help you identify service gaps and really just be strategic about how you are going to use your CSBG funds. Doing a regular assessment can also really serve as a resource that highlights the linkages and the strategic partnerships that might enhance the work. And we know that those are our primary uses of CSBG, and they can be used to further support your community. I will also say regarding CSBG that it may be a small piece of your local tribe's budget, but it does have the power to bring together resources across sectors to, again, fight those causes and conditions of poverty, as well as fill some of the service gaps by using CSBG funds to leverage resources with other programs. Now, in terms of, how one would go about leveraging resources and using CSBG in a way to really enhance the benefits to your tribal community, we recognize that technical assistance is of the utmost importance. And so to support the tribal community with these efforts, I want to make sure that you are aware that on May 3rd through the 5th of 2002, this year, OCS will host the CSBG Tribal Network 2022 annual meeting. And the theme of that meeting is putting the flexibilities of CSBG to work for tribal communities. This will be a virtual event, and it will include the federal team greeting and update session, and it will also include a CSBG tribal roundtable with CSBG tribal administrators and invited tribal leaders. OCS has hosted the first annual CSBG tribal conference last year, and just know that this continued engagement improvement that is happening this year really it does serve as evidence of our continued commitment to work directly with the tribal community and to address your unique needs and concerns. I want to ensure that we have enough time to go over the other programs, but I think it is important to note that, you know, from OCS's perspective, we can't underestimate the impact that we know that the COVID pandemic has had on the tribal community. We know that tribes have been working really diligently and to persevere during this difficult time. And we are encouraging you to reach out to us for additional assistance in terms of how you can make the best use of the funding that has been made available to you. We also know that there are some tribes that have taken some innovative approaches to expand their emergency response and do things in terms of coordination and care, everything from some health and safety initiatives to income access assistance and just different areas that address the pandemic like COVID-19 testing. So we have information in that regard that we can also share with you. Next, what I want to do is just highlight the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. LIHEAP assists eligible low-income households with their heating and cooling energy costs, bill payment assistance, energy crisis assistance, weatherization, as well as energy-related home repairs, very small home repairs. This is a program that is really designed to ensure the health and safety of the most vulnerable citizens by, number one, keeping homes cool in the summer and keeping them warm in the winter. And although we know that the last 2 years have been challenging for many families, LIHEAP has worked very hard to make sure there are resources available to alleviate some of these burdens. I think it's important to note that as we are focused in this plenary session on economic development and mobility, we just cannot understate how the negative effects of climate change are really felt most powerfully by our low-income communities, and that includes communities of colors and our tribal communities. And so we know that when families and individuals are suffering from extreme conditions, whether hot or cold, it makes it challenging for these individuals to move on with things that support, again, their economic mobility journey and the community's economic development. So to that end, I do think it's important to note that there has been unprecedented investment in LIHEAP through the American Rescue Plan Act and the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, which has contributed $48 million and $1.1 million respectively to the tribal LIHEAP programs. These funds, in addition to the regular annual funding awards, can be used toward eligible household energy costs and, again, or minor home repair. I will add that our Division of Energy Assistance that administers the LIHEAP program has hosted several webinars, training, and technical assistance sessions, as well as office hour meetings to provide an opportunity for our grant recipients to ask questions and also sort of bounce ideas off of OCS as well as their LIHEAP colleagues. So we encourage our LIHEAP grantees to think creatively and strategically for ways to, obligate those funds by the deadline and in response to your community needs. This might include things like providing supplemental payments for previously approved households, perhaps even extending the application periods or increasing benefit levels and adding program components that make sure that you increase the reach, if you will, of your LIHEAP program. I will say that, because of this historic level of funding. LIHEAP has also drawn more interest from external stakeholders, which has provided OCS an opportunity to really partner closely with more agencies and offices than we ever have before. An example of that is in November, LIHEAP was featured prominently in the White House's Winter Readiness Convening with Secretary Granholm and Secretary Becerra. And the program has continued to be amplified by the White House, HHS, and ACF. And for that, we are very thankful. In fact, this is the first time in our history that OCS has a weekly call with the White House to discuss priorities related to LIHEAP. And we've held listening sessions for the White House so that they can hear directly from LIHEAP, grant recipients, and community action agencies that are implementing LIHEAP. We have also developed a strong working relationship with Treasury, and we have collaborated with them on several technical assistance and training opportunities for LIHEAP and the emergency rental assistance providers. And these efforts have been spotlighted during numerous other meetings and engagements. So why does all that matter? Why is it important? These engagements and collaborations give OCS a seat at the table, not only as an opportunity to highlight LIHEAP as a program, but to speak about the populations that are receiving these funds and their specific needs and issues, and that includes the tribal communities. So we see that as a unique opportunity to put forward the things that we're learning from you in regards to what's needed for this particular program. I will say that our commitment to ensuring the tribal community has the resources needed to support their community is always at the forefront. An example of that would be that, OCS worked very diligently to ensure that our new water assistance program, or LIWAP, employed a floor to ensure that tribal organizations that receive LIWAP funding had sufficient resources to actually administer the program. And I will add that that is something that we're looking at across all OCS programs, making sure that the funding levels are such that it can meet the needs of communities, and it, in essence, sort of makes the administrative burden of administering a program worth it, if you will. I'll just sort of wrap up here because I know we're at time, but I will say that one of the things that we know has been on the radar of the tribal communities and is the issue of technical assistance. OCS has employed training and technical assistance services in a variety of ways. I'm really excited that we have been able to increase the number of contracts that we have entered that are specifically designed to provide training and technical assistance for the tribal community. We are going to continue to coordinate training and technical assistance activities as we have done most recently this year, including everything from our office hours and our program webinars. And as always, we will continue with inviting the tribal community to participate in those. But in addition to that, we will have specifically identify separate times during which we can cover these same topics, but do it through the lens of the tribal community so we can address issues specific to your needs and concerns. We are also really excited to just be able to continue to support and celebrate the tribal community. We are going to do everything that we can to just shine a light on the needs, not only the needs, but the excellent work that is happening within your communities whenever those opportunities present themselves. And I will just again say on behalf of Dr. Howard, we are proud of our tribal LIHEAP partners. We're proud of our other tribal that are administering OCS programs and doing what is needed to address the needs of your communities. And we are very excited to continue our engagement with you. My team stands at the ready to work in collaboration with you and learn from you so that we can meet your needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director George. We certainly appreciate all the information that you provided for us. As we move forward on our economic development panel with the underscoring theme of supporting, celebrating, and sustaining our Native American and Pacific Islander communities, I want to take a moment here to let you know that we have a number of questions that may be coming up as you are being introduced to the information and opportunities that are available. We will have a question and answer session following the last panelists of our panel, where you can ask questions related to any of the information that's been provided. And so with that, it is my honor to introduce to you the Deputy Commissioner for the Administration for Native Americans, Hope McDonald Lonetree.
Thank you, Enikeha, Mr. Bluehouse. Greatly appreciate your ability to bring us all together today and provide some good information for our grant recipients. First, Enikeha, Shea Hope McDonald Lonetree, Yenshia Totachini Nishle, Hashkahat Soho Bushichin, Natlani Edishache Ado Batani Edishanella. I am super excited to be here today, and it's been a year now since I've been at ANA, and I'm excited to present some of the opportunities that we have here to share with you, but also looking ahead, what is it that we need to learn from you? So thank you again. So many of you may know, but since 1974, ANA was created. In 1974, ANA was created and has been providing support for Native American communities, including federally recognized tribes, state recognized tribes, Native Hawaiians, and Native peoples in the Pacific Islands. Today, we continue to support the social and economic well-being of Native American communities. And recently, ANA has worked with ACF leadership to establish some strategic goals for this year, and leading the list was elevating economic mobility and economic development within tribal nations and indigenous communities. ANA's efforts to meet this goal include providing grant funding opportunities through ANA's social and economic development strategies, grants, and providing funding that is available for Native American community development financial institutions through the Indian Community Economic Enhancement Act of 2020. In the past, ANA's social and economic development grants funded projects that supported agricultural business development, business marketing support, economic development incubators, and job training and career development initiatives, as well as support for business technology development and technical assistance. ANA grants have created hundreds of jobs in our communities, and we are very happy to continue to partner with you on that. In February, ANA hosted 2 calls with Native American CDFI leadership to share information on the more than $34 million in funding that is available from 2021 through 2025, and on support for Native American commercial code development and court training, as well as a master plan development for infrastructure in tribal communities, which we all know is imperative in developing our communities. In an effort to help our grantees leverage funding for their projects, I have taken the initiative to reach out to other federal agencies and programs to learn more about their resources to support tribal economic development and to identify areas of potential collaboration. To date, ANA has met and continues to meet with the White House Council on Native American Affairs, BIA, the Veterans Affairs, Department of Transportation, and the Small Business Administration, as well as Treasury, to name a few. In the coming months, I will meet with other agencies to play a critical role in labor programs for tribal communities to better understand the federal Indian preference policy within BIA and HHS, and to study the application of the Buy Indian Act. ANA's goal to support economic mobility and economic development in Native American communities is more than just achievable when it is combined with the SEDS grant fundings that we have here. And so at this moment, I'd like to hand it over to our grants director, Ms. Camilla Strickland, who will provide a brief overview of our SEDS grants. Mia?
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Hope. On January the 24th, ANA published the Notice of Funding Opportunities for our FY22 funds for community-based projects for the Social and Economic Development Strategies Program, also known as SEDS. This NOFO is focused on community-driven projects designed to grow local economies, strengthen Native American families, including the preservation of Native American cultures, and decrease the high rate of current challenges caused by the lack of community-based businesses and social and economic infrastructure in Native American communities. The SEDS program supports the principle that social and economic development are interrelated and essential for the development of thriving Native communities. SEDS projects focus on one or more of the following three interrelated concepts that form a foundation for self-sufficiency: social development that supports local access to, control of, and coordination with programs and services that safeguard the health, well-being, and culture of Native peoples. Secondly, economic development that fosters the development of stable, diversified local economies and economic activities that provide jobs and business opportunities that promote economic well-being and self-sufficiency in Native American communities. And third, governance that assists tribes, Native organizations, and Alaska Native village governments to increase their ability to enhance their administrative infrastructure and capacity to develop and enforce laws, regulations, codes, and policies that reflect and promote the interests of community members. Funded SEDS projects will reflect outcomes and include specific strategies for enhancing or improving community conditions and achieving long-term community goals. As Hope mentioned, due to the congressional passage of the Indian Community Economic Enhancement Act of 2020, ANA will prioritize funding for applications seeking assistance for the development of tribal code or court systems for purposes of economic development, including commercial codes, training for court personnel, and the development of nonprofit subsidiaries or other tribal business structures. The development of Native community development financial institutions, CDFIs, including training and administrative expenses. And thirdly, the development of a tribal master plan for community and economic development and infrastructure. So applications that propose projects for those legislative priorities will receive up to 10 bonus points. And in addition to the economic development priorities, through tribal consultation, ANA has identified community priorities and will provide 5 bonus points for projects that focus support for Native veterans, emergency preparedness and response, and missing and murdered Indigenous persons. The SEDS NOFO is open currently until April the 15th. Applicants may request up to $400,000 a year for up to 3 years. Eligible entities for ANA funds include federal and state recognized tribes, tribal consortia, Native American nonprofit organizations in urban and rural settings, Alaska Native villages as defined by ANSCA, nonprofit Alaska regional corporations and associations, tribal colleges and universities, as well as public and nonprofit agencies serving Native Hawaiians and the Native peoples of Guam, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. And while applicants can propose projects that are based on their community's long-range goals, currently the program areas of interest under SEDS include agriculture, asset building, career pathways, commercial trade, economic competitiveness, economic infrastructure, entrepreneurship, and microbusiness, master plans for community and economic development, Native CDFIs, workforce development, subsistence lifeways, tourism, and that's just to name a few. ANA's SEDS program does generate jobs, but we also have other notice of funding opportunities currently open, including Native languages, preservation and maintenance, the Esther Martinez Immersion, SEDS for Alaska, and environmental regulatory enhancement. And many of these programs we've found also create jobs and training development opportunities. Just to touch a little bit on what support you can receive, ANA has 4 regional training and technical assistance centers, Eastern, Western, Alaska, and Pacific. And each of the TA centers has held their own pre-application trainings, which you can still find the recordings on their websites. And they can also provide individual support to applicants. You can also find the pre-application manual and an ANA application toolkit on our website. So we're here to support you and want to help you grow your local economies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Appreciate that. Can you all hear me, Micah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just to close here, I want to say the true cost of the pandemic's impact within tribal nations and indigenous communities has yet to be fully determined. And recently, the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics included Native Americans in the National Jobs Report. At the height of the pandemic, Native Americans experienced more than 28% unemployment. Beyond the statistics, we are talking about the ability of indigenous people to earn an income, to put food on the table, to purchase the technology and access to the internet needed for their children to attend classes from home, and to compete in a job market that is increasingly online, and to keep the electricity on during the darkest days of the pandemic. Furthermore, with thousands of Native American high school students graduating year after year, the challenging economic conditions within our tribal communities are compounding to unsustainable levels. While some may continue to on to higher education, and some may be lucky enough to find employment near their home, the vast majority will be unskilled and looking for jobs months after graduating. We must continue to ensure that the economic future of our tribal nations and our young people. With the pandemic decreasing numbers of infections and hospitalizations and deaths, the hard work of economic recovery begins. At ANA, we are here to provide SEDS grant funding resources for your communities to not only recover from the pandemic, but to thrive. We are also here to let you know that we are partnering to help you leverage other resources. ANA will continue to listen and learn about the need for economic development in your community, and we will increase our outreach to collaborate with federal agencies for a focused response to bolster tribal economies and businesses. Finally, let's take advantage of the tremendous funding opportunities that Ms. Libby Washburn mentioned earlier to help recovery efforts in our community. We are here to help, we are here to listen, and we want to help the communities in our indigenous areas to thrive. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner McDonald Lonetree. We certainly appreciate all this wonderful information. I wanted to call attention to the chat where we posted the link for ANA's grant funding opportunities, and you'll find information that was discussed by both Mia as well as the Deputy Commissioner. And now I want to introduce to you Denise Edwards, who is the Chief of Division of Economic Development at the Department of Interior, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. And with that, Denise.
Shawant Eskenahay, thank you, Mr. Bluehouse, for the lovely introduction. My name is Denise Edwards. I'm the Chief for the Division of Economic Development, and I'm originally from the Tuscarora Nation. We're located about 10 miles north of Niagara Falls, New York, but I'm joining you from the traditional homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute Nations in Lakewood, Colorado. So just give me a moment while I share my screen. I'm going to share our PowerPoint. Can everyone see it?
Looks great, Denise.
Awesome. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to review the programs that we offer from the Office of Indian Economic Development. So we're formerly known as the Office of Indian Energy and Economic Development, but changed our name last year. And we support the economic development of American Indian and Alaska Native communities by offering access to capital through grant opportunities and loan guarantees, and by providing technical assistance to federally recognized AIA and tribes. So our office includes two divisions, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that: the Division of Capital Investment and the Division of Economic Development. So I'll start off with the Division of Capital Investment. This division delivers the Indian Loan Guarantee and Insurance Program, and this helps Indian-owned businesses get commercial financing almost as easily as non-Indian businesses can. And within this division, you make the loans and we'll back you up. So what that means is that the loan guarantee and insurance provide lenders with additional assurance of repayments, and that brings Indian country lending within prudent risk tolerance. It also provides the loans that are needed for commercially reasonable terms, and it allows lenders to expand their customer base where opportunities for growth can be extraordinary. So we're excited about that. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a loan guarantee and the loan insurance. Our loan guarantees, the program lenders can apply for a loan guarantee, and all applications are submitted to DCI's credit committee. So there's no application fee. If you're approved, there is a loan guarantee premium of 2% of the guaranteed portion of the loan. And then the loan insurance, program lenders may issue insured loans up to pre-authorized dollar total for a specified period of time. And all loans under a cumulative loan total of $250,000 to a particular borrower may be issued without prior DCI credit committee approval. So there is a loan insurance premium of 1% of the insured portion of the loan. So a couple slides to emphasize some of the exciting projects we've been able to support through the loan guarantee program. We've helped finance convenience stores. We've also financed hotels. We've provided support for airport limousine services, bowling alleys, and then also a deep water docking facility. So there's lots of flexibility with the loan guarantee program, and really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to share more about those great opportunities. This is our team for the Division of Capital Investment. We cover support across Indian country by zone. So we wanted to make sure that we shared who to contact if you have questions or need support. The acting chief is David Johnson. He's a good place to start if you'd like to get more information about our loan guarantee program. Jennifer Cesar is in our Alaska zone, and her contact information is there. David Glass is our Northwest zone, and his contact information is there. And then Eastern is Stephanie West, and Alsace Lambrois is in Southwest. So we would love to hear from you if you're interested in our loan guarantee program. So the division that I oversee is the Division of Economic Development, and we offer tribal technical assistance through our economic development and grant staff. We provide development discretionary competitive grant opportunities, and we just started our new technical assistance contract with Tribal Tech, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about that as well. So what our office does, we have economic development specialists, and we have a whole team that delivers virtual presentations on our grant programs. They do this at national and regional tribal events, including program overviews and providing information on how to apply for our grants, and providing key dates and contacts. We also have a group that provides assistance and resources to all of our grant applications that don't get awarded. So they follow up individually with the non-awarded tribes to provide relevant alternative resources from federal, state, and nonprofit partners, including grants and training and one-on-one technical assistance. So if you want more information about our economic development team, you can contact me directly, or you can contact Janelle Green. She works in our Alaska and Southwest zone. You can contact Jim Henry, who is working in our Northwest zone, or you can contact Ann Jennings, who is in our Eastern zone. So the other piece of what our Division of Economic Development does is we provide grants. So the first one is our Native American Business Development Institute, our NABD grant. And this funds federally recognized tribes to hire consultants and conduct economic development feasibility studies. We also have a tribal tourism grant, which is funded through our Native Act funding. And this supports federally recognized tribes and tribal organizations in hiring consultants to conduct tourism feasibility studies and develop tourism business plans. And then our Living Languages Grant Program just closed. The applications are currently being reviewed. We support these funds to provide native language instruction immersion programs, and build tribal capacity to create or expand language preservation programs. And then we also have historically provided a broadband grant, and it's also looking at feasibility studies for tribes to explore the possibility of developing or extending broadband services in their communities. And then our most recent grant, which is brand new, is the Indian Business Incubator Program grant. And this one is to establish and operate business incubators that serve entrepreneurs or startup early stage businesses who will provide products or services to tribal reservation communities. This is our newest grant. It just opened on grants.gov this week. And so we'll share that link for everyone to access that. So our new technical assistance contract, we're really excited about this. We have designed this effort according to Administration for Native Americans successful TA model. So we are going to be providing pre-application training for all of our grant programs. We're going to be providing business plan development and grant writing virtual trainings. We're also going to provide sustainability workshops and trainings to all interested applicants, with special emphasis on supporting tribes, tribal organizations, and Native Hawaiian organizations to successfully pursue tourism grant applications. And then we're also going to be convening a tourism annual grantee conference for our current tourism grantees. So we are in the process of updating our website so that we can provide this information and everyone can connect with Tribal Tech for support. So look for that coming soon. So today is an opportunity for more information. This was really just introduction to our programs. There's going to be a session of Walking with Tribes and Native Businesses today, 3:10 to 4:10 Eastern Standard Time, where you're going to get lots more information from our team about both the Division of Capital Investment and the Division of Economic Development. So please join if you're interested in hearing more details about our programs. If you'd like to get in touch with us, this is our website. For more information, our director is Anna LeBeau, and her contact information is there. You can also connect with Dennis Wilson, who is our grants management specialist. Be happy to help you as well, or feel free to contact me. I'd love to help as well. Niawa, thank you, everyone. And Mr. Bluehouse, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. That was very helpful information, and thank you so much for being here with us. And so now we are going to go on to a presentation from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, Fatima Abbas, who is the Senior Advisor, as well as Josh Jackson, who is the Policy Advisor. So Fatima and Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Milton. And I think PowerPoint is going to be brought up on the screen, but we can start. Good afternoon and good morning to those out west. My name is Fatima Abbas, and I'm Halawa Saponi, and I currently serve as a Senior Advisor in the Office of Recovery Programs on the Tribal Policy and Engagement team. And today, my Treasury colleague, Policy Advisor Joshua Jackson, and I are going to provide an overview of Treasury's tribal recovery funds and their potential economic development uses. Next slide, please. So first, for some orientation on Treasury's tribal work, this occurs across multiple components of the department. Tax matters are within the purview of the Internal Revenue Service and the Office of Tax Policy, and the Treasury Tribal Advisory Committee advises on matters involving the taxation of Indians. And then there's the Treasury Tribal Affairs Program, which is in Maine Treasury. They coordinate tribal consultation and work with offices on other matters impacting tribes, such as funding for Native Community Development Financial Institutions, which is within the CDFI fund. And that takes us to Treasury's recovery funds. Those are housed in our new Office of Recovery Programs, which was created in April 2021 to lead the department's implementation of over $350 billion in relief and recovery programs. Within this office, we have a tribal policy and engagement team, which consists of myself and 3 other advisors. And our role is to work across all of the 7 Treasury tribal recovery funds on both policy development, outreach, and compliance support for each individual tribal government to support your success on these funds. Next slide, please. So in total, Treasury is managing over 30 billion in tribal recovery set-asides, and before you is a list of those funds and the various uses. What we're going to do next is do a quick run through of the economic development uses of the main Treasury funds. Next slide, please. The Treasury operates an economic development program entitled the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program contains a 500 million tribal set-aside that provides direct funding for tribes to fund small business programs. This can be either small businesses that are tribal enterprises, or it can be individual native small businesses. A tribe may also elect to invest in non-native businesses that are on or off tribal land. So there's a lot of flexibility at the tribe's discretion. Tribes may also pool their funds through a consortia. And so they can construct a range of programs from access to capital, lending support, to even venture capital programs. The deadline for application submission is coming up on May 11th, and Treasury is holding weekly tribal government office hours every single Tuesday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Next slide, please. And now for our largest fund, that is the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund that provides a $20 billion tribal set-aside and constitutes historic relief for tribal nations. The statute required that 1 billion be equally divided amongst each tribe, and then of the remaining 19 billion, based on tribal consultation, Treasury developed a formula that was 65% self-certified tribal enrollment and 35% tribal employment data. 99% of those funds have been dispersed to tribal nations, and these funds have 4 categories of use that provide broad flexibility for Treasury's economic tribes' economic recovery. And on the next slide, we'll go through some of those uses. Thank you. So the first use is replacement of lost revenue. Tribes can provide the amount of lost revenue that a tribe incurred during the pandemic can be used to fund government services up to the lost revenue amount. To make this easier for small governments, we have a standard deduction for $10 million, but a tribe can go much higher. And so to the extent that economic development was being funded as part of a tribe's government services, you can utilize these funds through the lost revenue category. Importantly, these funds can also be used as a non-federal match. So again, a non-federal match. So let's say there's an economic development program for another department, you can use your Treasury SLFRF funds as a match when you ordinarily wouldn't be able to use federal funds as a match. The next category is responding to the public health and economic effects of the pandemic. Under this category, tribal governments are presumed to be disproportionately impacted. And so tribes have broader flexibility to invest in households, communities, small businesses, nonprofits at the tribe's election. We've also simplified the administration of the small business category. So small businesses that are either operated by a tribe or that are on tribal lands are also presumed to be disproportionately impacted. These funds can also be used to for certain tribal industries like hospitality, gaming, tourism, and entertainment industries. And then the next category is premium pay for essential workers. Tribal government workforce is identified as eligible workers in critical infrastructure. And then the last category is water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So tribes have, again, broad flexibility to invest in infrastructure with their SLFRF funds. So in conclusion, this is again our largest tribal set aside within Treasury. The funds have to be obligated by 2024 and expended by 2026. Next slide, please. And our most recent government program is entitled the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund under Section 605 of ARPA. It allocates $250 million per year to tribal governments for fiscal years 2022 and 2023 for a total tribal set aside of 500 million. The statute provides that this fund may be used for any governmental purpose except for lobbying activities. So the statute is quite broad. The Secretary has discretion to develop the methodology, taking into account the economic conditions of each eligible tribe. Treasury conducted robust tribal consultations in February, and we're incorporating that feedback right now into our development of the allocation methodology. But this fund will be open this year, and tribes will receive funding both for fiscal year 2022 and then also fiscal year 2023. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joshua Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Fatima. We can go on to the next slide. So I will begin with the Capital Projects Fund. CPF was created to carry out critical capital projects that directly enable work, education, and health monitoring, including remote options in response to the public health emergency. ARP provided a $100 million tribal set-aside that was allocated in equal shares to tribal governments and the state of Hawaii for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands and Native Hawaiian education programs. This results in each tribe in the state of Hawaii receiving approximately $167,504. Because of the smaller allocation, Treasury adopted a streamlined tribal application to make the program more accessible. CPF allows 3 presumptively eligible uses that range from digital device purchases to supplementing other federal broadband funding, such as the NTIA Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program applications or SLFRF broadband projects. Applicants may also enter to joint applications with other tribes. And additionally, Treasury created an 8-month application window and are currently reviewing and approving applications on a rolling basis. The deadline for tribes to submit their CPF application is June 1st, 2022. And the end of this program is December 31st, 2026, when all funds must be expended. For more information regarding CPF, please visit Treasury website, and there you can find the guidance as well as a list of approved applications with descriptions of projects as examples. And additionally, the CPF also holds weekly tribal office hours every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. Next slide, please. And now I'll turn to our 2 tribal housing programs. Without proper and secure housing, tribes and their workforce cannot respond appropriately to the pandemic and further grow their economies. And I'll start first with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which makes funding available to low-income households that are unable to pay rent or utilities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Under ERA, the tribal set-aside is $800 million, and with the methodology is statutorily set, and it's based on the Indian Housing Block Grant Program. Tribes are subject to a recapturing of this funding this year if they do not spend or obligate 65% of their ERA funding. More details regarding this recapture process and timeline will be released soon. Also, tribes are only subject to quarterly ERA reporting. The next deadline for reporting is April 15th in 2022. Now, and I'll also turn to the Homeowners Assistance Fund. HAP provides a $496 million tribal set aside for assistance with mortgage payments, homeowners insurance, utility payments, and other qualified expenses for low-income households affected by the pandemic. The funding allocation methodology used for HAP uses the same methodology used for ERA, and tribes must have submitted a notice of fund request in December of 2021 in order to participate in HAP. And tribes should have received 10% of their HAP funds last year. And in order to receive the remainder of their funding, tribes must submit a HAP plan. While there's no deadline to submit your HAP plan, Treasury recommends tribes submit their plans as soon as possible. The HAP team is currently working quickly to approve HAP plans that have been submitted, and we thank those tribes for their submissions. And finally, we will soon be issuing reporting guidance for HAP, and will provide compliance information sessions for HAP reporting. Next slide, please. So thank you again for the opportunity to present from Treasury's perspective and the economic recovery work we're doing for tribes. You can find our information here on this slide of Fatima and I's email. And if you have general questions about tribal affairs at Treasury, you can email tribal.consult@treasury.gov. And for more information on Treasury's COVID relief funds, you can find it there on the Treasury's website. So I'll turn it over for Fatima for any other closing remarks.
Just wanted to say thank you all for the opportunity to present, and we look forward to answering any questions. We have a hard stop at 3 o'clock, but we are definitely available to meet one-on-one with any tribe that may have questions. Turning it back to Milton.
Thank you very much, Fatima, and thank you very much, Josh. That was some very informative information as well. And so at this time, we're going to turn over the question and answer period for our participants on the webinar. And so for the process we're going to use, there is a raise your hand function at the bottom of the Zoom web window. And you'll see it says raised hand. So if you wanted to ask a question of our panelists within the next 15 minutes, then please hit that little raised web hand icon, and we'll open up the question for you. And before we do that, we wanted to let people know that we are also utilizing the chat for questions, and for which we will also record and respond to as well. And so with that, are there any questions that any of our participants have for our panelists? So I'll go ahead and start with Tatiana Cosper, and the question that she has, are there any grants available for urban native organizations? The microphone's not working for her. So if anybody on the panel would like to answer that question for Tatiana.
So this is Denise Edwards, and we have a few of our grants that are available for tribal organizations. Business Incubators that is open is available for tribal organizations. Living Languages is also available. That one is closed, but it is available for tribal organizations as well.
Thank you very much, Denise. Anyone else would like to answer?
Hi, this is Mia with ANA, and yes, urban Indian organizations are definitely eligible for all of ANA's programs except for the Environmental Regulatory Enhancement Program.
Thank you very much, Mia. Appreciate that. So what we are going to do is make a request of our panelists to provide PowerPoints that were provided for this particular panel, and we'll send it out to people who've joined us for this particular panel. Another question that we'd received earlier was whether or not the loans or grants, whether they could be used for tribal child care facilities. Does any of our panelists have an answer for that question?
Yep, and I can jump in for Treasury's fund. So like a tribe would use it's set aside from the 20 billion tribal fund in the state and local fiscal recovery fund. Depending on which category it put its use under. So if it's under public health and negative economic impacts, you'd have to show that the child care facility has some relationship to a COVID impact. It's likely that you can show that, so that would be permissible. Lost revenue, however, is the broadest category. And so if your tribe is asserting a very large amount of lost revenue, you can also put the child care facility use under that category, and construction is permitted under that category.
Great, thank you very much, Fatima. The other question that we received from our chat is whether or not—
Mr. Bluehouse, I also wanted to add that our loan guarantee program with the Office of Indian Economic Development, we could certainly utilize that if it's a for-profit business for childcare. So, let us know if there's follow-up on that.
Wonderful. Thanks so very much, Denise. And so an additional question that we received from the chat is a question on whether non-federally recognized tribes, in this question, state recognized tribes, whether they're able to receive grant funding or loan funding, and where can they go for this information?
Again, ANA can certainly fund state recognized tribes. And I believe the person who asked that question actually does have an ANA grant. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mia. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. And so for the remainder of our time together, there are some prompting questions that I wanted to ask our panelists here that will provide additional information for our participants. And so question number 5 that we have prepared for ACF grant recipients, how can we further support economic development in your communities? And I think that that more or less was a question that is directed towards ACF grant recipients. And given the scope of the question itself and the many wonderful recipients that we have joining us today, in the interest of time, perhaps you can provide the information directly to ANA, and that would be very helpful for us to distribute to our colleagues. Another question that we have is question number 1, which is, in addition for funding economic development projects, will there be access to increased technical assistance for Native American communities for economic growth, access to private industries, federal procurement, and business experts, economists for planning and development?
Mr. Bluehouse, this is Denise again, Office of Indian Economic Development. We do have our technical assistance contract where we're going to be providing support to tribes, tribal organizations, and other entities that are eligible for our grant funding. And we are going to be able to provide support for pre-application training, for sustainability, which certainly would look at economic opportunities and business plan development. And so there's lots of technical assistance that we'll be able to provide. If tribes are interested in procurement, please don't hesitate to contact our office because we'd be happy to connect you to the resources that you need.
Thank you very much, Denise.
And this is Janelle George with OCS. I will just add that in addition to the information I shared during my talking points regarding technical assistance, we are going to be continuing with targeted TA to our OCS tribal grantees in a more, what I will refer to as an intimate setting. So as I mentioned, we'll be doing office hours, and then we will also be having additional listening sessions because we do want to make sure that any technical assistance that we are developing, that it is responsive to what the tribal organizations see as their needs. So we have a priority to lift up the voices from the field. And in order to do that, we have to be speaking with them. So those listening sessions will be happening.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that answer. And so from our chat, we do have a question for the Treasury. And the question is funds for infrastructure support. Is your definition of infrastructure limited to 3 categories listed on the screen, or do you have a broader definition of infrastructure? And for that, we have a chat response from Fatima regarding the HAF plan. And the answer is, can you contact Joshua Jackson at jjackson@treasury.gov, and we will give you an update on that particular information. And so, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think there's 2 questions, one on our homeowner assistance fund. If any tribe is awaiting the status of any of their applications, please reach out to Joshua Jackson and we will work to get you an update. On the infrastructure question, the 3 uses that I listed, water, sewer, and broadband, that's in the statute. So that's under one of the categories, but the lost revenue category, again, is the broadest. So if a tribe is building road infrastructure or some other type of infrastructure, they could use their funds if it's in the lost revenue category. And again, we'd be happy to meet with you to go through that.
Thank you very much, Fatima. And an additional question from Nancy Carnley is, how can state recognized tribes, receive assistance from the Treasury and Office of Indian Economic Development?
So Treasury's funds are direct set-asides for federally recognized tribes, but Treasury is managing over $350 billion to state and local governments, and Treasury has asked them to include an equity focus, which is to serve underserved communities. That includes AI and federally recognized and non-federally recognized. So non-federally recognized tribes can apply for the funding from states and counties, of which they have more funding than the direct tribal set-asides.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Fatima. I do appreciate it. And finally, we have another question here related to the Native American CDFI. Is a Native American CDFI eligible to apply for Native American Business Incubator Program, or is it just for tribes? And I think this question might be for Denise.
I'm sure that's for me, and I will get the answer just shortly. Just give me a moment.
Okay, do appreciate that. Thank you very much, Denise. And so back to our prompting questions, we do have another conversation here related to increasing prices. And so the question is, with increasing concerns about recession, higher costs for goods and services, and rising prices of gas, what additional steps will the administration take to support economic stability within tribal communities? And that might be a question for Libby Washburn.
Trying to unmute and start my video. So, you know, I believe anything that the federal government is doing to support other groups, other entities, other individuals, Indians, Native American tribes, communities will be included. I think we've seen from the American Rescue Plan, from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, from everything that has been moving in this first year, that tribes are included and have a seat at the table. And so whatever will be done, if we have to deal with it, if we have a recession, if that comes to fruition, tribes will be included in whatever support efforts that the federal government creates.
Thank you very much, Libby. That's very helpful for us to know. And we have a question from the chat from Tom Jordan. Under the incubator grant program, will actual construction costs that provide services to Native American communities be allowed? And that one, I guess, is for Denise as well.
So I'm going to back up and answer the first question because I have that one available. Native CDFIs are eligible to apply for the business incubators. And then we also will get the answer on the other one. It's just came out 2 days ago, so please forgive us for not having the answers immediately, but I'll work on that right now. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Denise. We certainly appreciate it. And with that, I wanted to do one last call for any questions that any of our participants may have for our panelists. You can post the question in the chat and we can ask that of our panelists. And so we'll do one last call for questions. Okay, there's one question that came through from Colleen Rosier. Will this plenary session be recorded and available for review later? Yes, it is currently being recorded, and we will provide information on where we can receive that. And then there's another question that says, as we are all aware, and this is from Shakuli Hall, as you're all aware, prices for everything is and will continue to go up. Will funding increase on your end? Will funding increase for the grants and the various financial supports that any of our panelists provided?
At least on the Treasury's end, ours are dependent on statutes, so any increase would have to be through annual appropriations. That being said, the tribal feedback that we receive about the rising costs in your respective areas, we take that into consideration as we revise program requirements to try to implement the maximum flexibility for tribes, including for admin costs. So at Treasury, we utilize your feedback on that to try to assist tribes on the ground.
And this is Janelle with OCS. I will add that both LIHEAP and CSBG did receive an increase, 50 million and 10 million respectively. So that will, those grantees will see an impact in that as it relates to grant awards.
Thank you very much, Janelle, and thank you very much, Denise and others, for providing some really informative answers to some very thoughtful questions from our participants. And so I wanted to mention that in our chat, we do have links for a number of the resources that were mentioned for both loans and grants from the various federal agencies. But in addition to that, we have also put in a link for the White House Council on Native American Affairs. And that is a wonderful link for learning about upcoming tribal consultations related to the spectrum of initiatives that are being pursued by the White House related to improving the quality of life for tribal communities and for Native communities in the Pacific Islands and in Hawaii. And so for all of that, we wanted to thank you all so very much for participating in our economic development panel. And we also want to send out a special thank you for all of our panelists and the wonderful work that they are doing to ensure that we have very fruitful and abundant economic recovery from the pandemic. And so with all of that, thank you very much, and have a very wonderful and safe afternoon and evening. Thank you.